As Socrates famously stated, wisdom begins with wonder. I think we've all had certain memories, both positive and negative, that left us seemingly transformed, wiser in some sense, whether it was in terms of self-knowledge or in the alteration of one's view of the world. We see this happen frequently with kids, where the world is freshly experienced at every turn, leaving the child in a constant state of perplexed amazement. However, as you get older, these experiences grow scarce, thanks to a monotonous routine of groceries, laundry, office work, and screen time. We tend to develop a bubble of ideological comfort, where we rarely drift into anything that will actually challenge us. As the philosopher Byung-Chul Han notes, we live in a palliative society, where an aversion to anything possibly painful has left us secure and blissfully content. However, as he notes, it has also left us captive in the hell of the same. What many of us lack is wonder, or as psychologists have named it, awe. Most cities, for example, provide a pretty limited access to nature. I also noticed in my day-to-day that I had constrained myself to viewing the same media repetitively rather than spending time looking at other forms of content and art. And secularism itself has likely led to an increased skepticism and a lack of interest in spirituality or the supernatural. Rarely does the average individual get the chance to actually experience awe. And when we do get the chance, we take it as a rare instance rather than something that could be regularly experienced. And why should we experience more awe? Well, if we trust Socrates, it leads to more wisdom. And the more wisdom there is, then maybe the better the world will be. But first, what is awe? This video is sponsored by Brilliant. There is so much information out there, but does that necessarily mean that we are any more knowledgeable? How do you actually know when you know something? How do you navigate uncertainty? I used to think that these questions were beyond the realm of understanding. That is until I found Brilliant, a fun and interactive way to learn topics that I usually would find to be way too abstract. Brilliant offers hands-on lessons in math, science, and computer science, allowing you to learn 6 times more effectively than watching lectures, thanks to its interactive approach. I found Brilliant's course on knowledge and uncertainty to be very helpful in navigating all of the different topics I make videos about. The course goes over the fundamentals of information theory and Bayesian inference, and has taught me great little nuggets like the idea of maximal uncertainty. If your curiosity goes beyond statistics, Brilliant has over 60 other courses with clear and intuitive explanations that can tell you how STEM actually works and how it's relevant in your everyday life. No matter what your level of knowledge, the step-by-step solutions and fun problem-solving exercises ensure that you'll be able to master all sorts of technical subjects. To get started for free, visit brilliant.org/Sisyphus55 or click on the link in the description. The first 200 of you will get 20% off Brilliant's annual premium subscription. As David Elkins writes, awe is a lightning bolt that marks in memory those moments when the doors of perception are cleansed and we see with the startling clarity what is truly important in life. These are those moments in which time stands still, where your sense of self shrinks and where what is relevant and meaningful smacks you in the face. This sounds good and all, but can we actually operationalize it? According to Keltner and Haidt, awe is composed of 2 specific traits. For one, there is perceived vastness, referring to anything that is experienced as being either larger than oneself or larger than one's ordinary level of experience. Essentially, awe feels overwhelming, whether it be the Grand Canyon or the overview effect, the strange sensation that astronauts experience when looking down at our little blue planet. This sense of awe exceeds what we typically experience. Secondly, awe requires a need for accommodation. This is based upon Piaget's theory of cognitive development, specifically with regard to schema development in children. In accommodation, the child, when confronted by novel stimuli, either modifies an existing schema or forms an entirely new schema to deal with the new info. In terms of perceived vastness, we could see the same effort of accommodation occur when we experience awe. We try to make sense of it and in turn open ourselves up to having our minds changed. This process can of course be enlightening. We may find ourselves in awe at witnessing a great act of kindness, prompting us to be more giving. Or we may be amazed by a work of art, inspiring us to explore our own creative potential. However, awe can also be terrifying. Although Keltner and Haidt propose that there are certain positive flavors of awe, such as those that are virtue-based or beauty-based, they also note that there are threat-based forms of awe. Stranded in a deadly storm or witnessing the passing of a loved one can also invoke a perceived vastness, a sense of the world as inconceivably powerful and mysterious. However, in such experiences, we may find ourselves terrified rather than enlightened, especially when we are unable to accommodate such experiences into our pre-existing schemas. This fear, best described by Krishnamurti as simply the movement from certainty to uncertainty, can only be overcome through understanding. Helpfully, Krishnamurti notes that our over-identification with our own thoughts and overall rigidity of selfhood, which gives us both pleasure and fear, is what truly blocks our ability to understand. It is here where awe gives us some space for potential growth in spite of negative experiences. As he writes, "I see a beautiful tree without a single leaf against the sky. It is extraordinarily beautiful, and that is enough, finished. Why should thought come in and say, I should have that same delight tomorrow?" Awe, whether threat-based or beautiful, elicits moments that, if we truly stand at attention, allow us to appreciate the significance of transience, that all of this will pass, including one day ourselves. Awe then appears as an altered state of consciousness. Some speculate that this provided an evolutionary advantage. Awe's capacity to induce a need for accommodation likely led our ancestors to adapt their mental schemas and thereby increase their odds of survival. In fact, a 2010 study demonstrates that inspiring awe in others made people more skeptical of weak arguments, suggesting that awe may lead to better reality detection, an important cognitive mechanism in the brutality of the prehistoric era. It seems likely that awe-inspiring experiences elicit us to think big picture and adjust our worldview. This is evident in the anecdotal transformations that people experience when traveling, where they must adjust to different sociocultural customs, and in doing so perceive the vastness of humanity. Or it may remind some of us of psychedelic experiences, both good and bad, that force us to confront the vastness of our own inner lives. This phenomenon of personal transformation is perhaps best exemplified by the psychoanalyst Viktor Frankl, a survivor of the Holocaust, who recounts the transformative effect of awe he had experienced shortly after liberation. One day, a few days after the liberation, I walked through the country past flowering meadows. Larks rose to the sky, and I could hear their joyous song. There was no one to be seen for miles around. There was nothing but the wide earth and sky, and the lark's jubilation and the freedom of space. I stopped, looked around and up to the sky, and then I went down on my knees. At that moment there was very little I knew of myself or the world. I had but one sentence in mind, always the same. I called to the Lord from my narrow prison, and he answered me in the freedom of space. How long I knelt there and repeated this sentence, memory can no longer recall. But I know that on that day, in that hour, my new life started. Step by step I progressed, until I again became a human being. What is behind this intensive transformative experience? Researchers have identified a consistent effect of awe which we can see as an accumulation of perceived vastness and the need for accommodation, the small self, which means the feeling of being small or insignificant relative to one's environment. Now, this does not necessarily mean that one must be in awe with something physically larger than themselves. It could be an idea or concept or even a brief moment of interconnection. These feelings can be both enlightening, especially in terms of helping us understand the larger world of which we are a part of, and This is reflective of the concept of interbeing, an understanding in Zen Buddhism that everything is interrelated and hence we are never truly alone and everything we do counts in some way. However, this experience of small self can also be terrifying, especially if we see ourselves as self-important. But if you are able to get over yourself and enjoy, for example, the beauty of a mountain range, then the small self helps explain many of the other positive effects of awe, such as humility, connectedness, and decreased materialism. Those with a dispositional sense of awe have been shown to hold a more balanced view of their strengths and weaknesses, and they feel as if their social network has expanded. They also become less concerned with money. On this note, awe may have wider social benefits. In an age where most of us spend our leisure time either shopping, hustling for some extra cash, or consuming content that makes us even more lustful over certain material goods, money appears to entirely dictate our happiness. It would make sense then for money to increase our ability to experience awe. You could afford to travel, to go to concerts, and to have the free time to wander in nature, right? However, a 2017 study suggests that people from higher social classes, well more likely to experience pride and contentment, are less likely than those from lower social classes to experience other-oriented emotions, such as compassion and love, and, as you guessed it, awe. The researchers offer a potential explanation. Those with more money are more prone to experience narcissism, which may rein in propensities toward awe and its self-diminishing effects. Associating your worth and others with a relative dollar value alienates you from experiencing a sense of interconnection with others and the world, consequently propagating those social rifts that have left many of us so isolated and bored today. To experience awe isn't something restricted to certain people. Instead, anything from cultivating a sense of mindfulness to curating a playlist of goosebump-invoking songs is all it takes. Many adventures to a local park, a trip to the zoo, volunteering, or even watching certain movies can invoke awe. On a societal level, advocating for a greater investment in the arts, in conserving and promoting green spaces, and labor regulations that permit more time for community and leisure could only be of benefit to individuals and the world. We are living in a time of limitless information, but this hasn't necessarily made us happier. We need wisdom, gained through the need for accommodation and perceived vastness inherent in awe, in order to navigate and cultivate a better world and hopefully happier lives for all of us.